First, let's get rid of the chat. Got it. And then turn the mic up.
Thank you. Can't see me. Okay, well, with no further ado, I'd like to introduce Cheryl Stapp. If you look up top writers in Sacramento, just Google it. Cheryl's name comes up. She's been a very successful historical writer of history. And, you know, she ran this group for quite a while before COVID hit. And so I'm sure I'll hear after the meeting about everything I need to do better next time, but we're learning as we go. Anyway, we're really happy to have Cheryl here. And Cheryl, take it away. See if that's loud enough. If not, I'll turn.
Can people hear me? Can you hear me? Okay. Can you hear me without the microphone? No. No. Okay, so I thought.
That's better.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. It's wonderful to see some familiar faces from when we used to meet here, you know, pre-COVID. Hope we get back to that as a regular basis. Again, because it's a lot of fun. I do write nonfiction California history, almost entirely Northern California history. I published 6 books so far, and a few, a few magazine articles, history magazines. Today I'm going to be discussing using pen names and also the importance of having a writing niche. These two topics aren't always addressed as often as some other aspects of writing. They do tend to meld together, to go together. And there's something that I really relate to because, I mean, obviously I have a niche, okay? And in years past, I did use a pen name. To continue, as writers, of course, we want to produce the very best work that we can. Okay, this is a little awkward because I don't have a lip here to help me turn the pages. Anyway, so I'll be a little slow going.
Your page turner.
That's okay, I'll do it. Anyway, as writers, of course, we want to write the very best things that we're capable of. Can you still hear? Still hear? Okay. And of course, there's plenty of how-to advice as we go along writing, from character development to plot, you know, that kind of thing. But then when it comes time to publish, we're always told that the most important marketing tool is a superlative title combined with a book's dazzling cover. Okay? But I would argue that the author's name on the cover is just as important. And that's because an author's name and what they write are interrelated in the reading public's mind. Readers develop expectations of any given author, certainly of the genre the author is known for, and also for the structure and style of the writing itself, or whatever it is about the books that attract them, about the author's work. This is definitely true of multi-published best-selling authors. That's what we all hope to become, right? Yeah, hopefully. To use or not use a pen name is a personal choice. There's not a right or wrong answer. Authors use them, radio and TV personalities use them, actors use them. Under the law, pen names aren't considered to be a separate person. They are simply aliases, although the word alias kind of has negative connotations, doesn't it? We think of, criminals using aliases. So let's just call it assumed names used for a specific purpose, okay? Perfectly legal, so long as there is no intent to defraud. So if you're just starting out, maybe for various reasons, you are considering using a pseudonym for your author name. Sorry. So if you do decide to use a pen name, Is it going to complicate your life? Let's take a look, though, first at the potential downside. Copyright rules allow you to register copyrights under a pen name, okay, with or without disclosing your real name. But what you choose to do here does affect the copyright term. Under current law, copyrights ordinarily last for the author's life plus 70 years, but for works published anonymously or under a pseudonym, the term is the shorter, I know this sounds confusing, is the shorter of 95 years from publication or 120 years from creation. Not everything that's created is published immediately, of course. Other legalities, from a legal standpoint, any pen name, this is even your real name with a different spelling, right, is considered a pseudonym. You may use any name you wish as a pen name. However, problems can arise over practical matters like getting paid in a name that matches what's on your bank account, and receiving tax forms at year end in a name that matches the spelling of the name of your name associated with your social security number, that kind of thing. Getting around this is just as simple as giving your publisher your real name, okay? And for copyright and royalties purposes, they're going to send you a 1099 at the end of the year, and it's just easier to do this. A word here about doing business registration. Some states or municipalities require a person doing business under fictitious names to register a DBA. With regard to pen names only, this does not apply because again, you're not creating a separate person. It's just another alternate name, so long as you receive payments and file a tax return in your legal name. But it does apply if you intend to set up bank accounts to receive payments in your pen name, okay? Bankers are very touchy about this, about allowing checks payable to, say, Susanna St. James to be deposited in Susan Smith's checking account, right? So if you insist for whatever reason on receiving royalties in your pen name, check with your banker, your attorney, your accountant, your local business licensing agency for help in setting this up. And there's another factor to consider about using a pen name, and that is staying in character issues. Okay? Just be aware, if you use a pen name as your author name, that when you appear in public at a book signing, at a book fair, whatever, where the public is going to be around buying books, you have to stay in that character. You have to assume that persona every time you appear in public. This is a burden for some people. It's no big deal for other people. So consider that too. So then, what is it that might make you decide to use a pen name? There are a lot of reasons, several reasons, and I'm going to just throw them out here in no particular order. Also, some of them overlap. Okay? Your real name is the same as another famous person. Okay? If your real name is Stephen King, Agatha Christie, John Grisham, Margaret Mitchell, Larry McMurtry, Emily Bronte, or the same as any other best-selling author, or indeed any other world-famous person, living or dead, then in the opinion of professional editors and publishers, you'd be better off with a pen name. This is not to discourage anyone who likes their real name and wants to use it. Just be aware that it could lead, with that name on the book cover, it could lead to a lot of confusion with someone who is already quite famous. And by the way, the reader who just grabs it off the shelf based on the name is going to be put out with you because you're the imposter. They're not going to be put out with the real author, okay, that they wanted to read. Next, you have a difficult name. Okay? You are a completely unknown first-time novelist your real name is difficult to spell or pronounce, and you feel that this might be a drawback to attracting readers. Pulitzer Prize winner Ann Tyler was in the middle of writing her first novel when she married a man whose Iranian surname, if I'm even pronouncing this right, Motoresi, falls in this difficult to spell or pronounce category. In her case, she had already published some short stories and articles under the name Tyler, so she just continued with it. Also, her husband was a practicing psychiatrist, I believe, who published in his own, in his own name as in professional journals, and maybe she didn't want to conflict with that for whatever reason. She went ahead with Tyler. Tyler is her maiden name then, not her legal name anymore, which makes it a pen name. However, she does take her copyrights in her full legal name, right? If you look at the copyright section. So if you have a difficult name, you might consider using a phonetic spelling or a shorter version of it for your author name. As previously mentioned, of course, this is still, though, considered a pseudonym. You change the spelling. And so think about that. On the other hand, John Lescroat, okay, whose last name is spelled Lescroat, so there's a lot of silent letters in that name, became a best-selling author despite having a name that's difficult to spell or pronounce, and so did lots of other people. If you want to know who they are, just do what I did, type in authors with a difficult name in your browser and they'll come up and see who they are. Another reason, you just plain don't like your real name. You've never liked it. You've always wanted to change it. In fact, you may have a little secret name that you thought up for yourself all these years, and this is your chance to use it just for the fun of it. You definitely want to conceal your true identity. Perhaps you've written something that you feel might embarrass your family or offend a day job employer, or even if the work is controversial enough, jeopardize your personal safety. This, of course, is very rare, but it does happen, has happened. Remember Salman Rushdie several years ago? Okay. Received threats on his life for what he had written. But again, like I say, it's rare. Stephen King used a pen name early in his career. He used this pen name Richard Bachman to conceal his identity, not because he was afraid he had offended somebody, but because he was so prolific and so successful at getting published that he didn't want it to appear that he was flooding the market. Of course, he was flooding the market, right? So, also because publishing standards at the time, among traditional publishers was that they would only, this was the 1970s, early 1980s, they would only publish one book per year, per author, okay? So having a pen name allowed him to do two, if you want two or three, in the same year. Eventually, Richard Bachman's true identity was found out, was discovered, which King very cleverly used as a publicity stunt. Back to that. In truth, though, using a pen name to conceal an identity worked better in the good old days, right? Before the internet, before social media, because there's really no real privacy anymore. In fact, though, Richard Bachman was exposed, Stephen King before 1989. This is right on the cusp of the World Wide Web, and before the advent of social media by a persistent Washington, D.C. bookstore clerk, okay, who noticed the similarity in styles and published his opinion, okay, and how Stephen King comes. He's out, so he stopped using that name. He has used other names, so in the years since. Anyway, it's difficult to hide these days. Using a pseudonym won't protect you from being sued for libel or slander. It might make it harder for plaintiffs to find you, but if they really want to and they're persistent, they'll do so eventually. You want to use your author name as a commercial marketing tool, okay? It's true that the sight and sound of some names lend weight and authority, while other names detract because they sound feeble or ineffective. You probably noticed that authors' names on especially historical romance novels are very old-fashioned and flowery. Many of the names on the hard-boiled stuff, murder mysteries and so on, have like hard consonant sounds in the author names. Lee Child, whose real name is James Grant, that's a pseudonym, is a good example of adopting a pseudonym for commercial reasons. When he left his job as a producer of BBC television dramas, actually he was laid off, he says, and started out as a writer of crime suspense thriller novels. He says he chose the name Child because that name fits on booksellers' shelves alphabetically between crime fiction greats Raymond Chandler and Agatha Christie. And okay, wise choice, right? And he chose the first name Lee based on there's some silly family joke that's just, it's too silly to repeat. Okay, but the result is he deliberately chose two alphabetically advantageous, one syllable, easily pronounced names that reflect his terse writing style. So there's that to think of too, right? A name that reflects your style, if that's possible. So his author name is a very effective marketing tool, and he's made millions. Maybe the best reason to use a pen name is you prefer to write in multiple genres. This is also known as genre hopping. Excuse me. As a traditional publishing industry well knows, different genres attract different readers. In other words, each genre draws a whole new target audience. In fact, the general wisdom in the publishing world is that using a different author name for each genre you write in is best, which is, I mean, this is just applying the same concept, right? This is just applying author name as a marketing tool. Interestingly, as a side note, most authors who stick to their own names when they do cross over into a new genre don't bring much of their readership along with them. And this is because their fans are fans of a given genre, right? Not just the author, but that given genre. They really don't want to read a different type of story written by author XYZ. They want to read a different kind of story, they'll find another, they find another author. I know I've experienced this jolt, buying a book authored by someone whose books I love. I saw the name, I bought the book, didn't look at it first till I got home, and then finding out the author's written something completely different from what it was I expected and wanted to read. Will genre hopping further your career? Many writers, creatively speaking, want the freedom to write anything that appeals to them. They don't want to be limited to one genre. They want to write children's books or mysteries or young adult or sci-fi as the mood strikes them. And so they resist settling into one genre. And anyway, in these days of self-publishing, does the traditional advice from publishers and agents, which is to stick with the genre, does it still apply? Well, maybe not. Yes, you can write and self-publish anything that inspires you, anything your heart desires, but remember that self-publishing only guarantees you have the opportunity to write and publish your work, not a guarantee that it gets noticed or read. Genre hopping does have its pluses. I'll just read these. It requires different writing strengths, allowing a writer to push their creative abilities and limits, to learn, to test, to experiment, and polish. It lets new writers explore genres and their own wide interests before deciding on the right fit for their style, their voice, and their personal passions. Those are the good sides of the flip side to this, however, is that although some people can write well in more than one genre, few actually excel in one genre, let alone excel in many. Right? That's the truth. The reason being that each genre has its own conventions and its own rhythms. This is an accepted, well-known aspect of the writing craft. And then too, each of us have our own natural aptitudes. The quote above about genres having different conventions and rhythms is by the late Bernard DeVoto, who he taught English at Northwestern University. He edited the Saturday Review of Literature for 2 years, and he wrote a monthly column for Harper's Magazine for 20 years. So we can trust him to know what he's talking about. He used his own name for his many, many hundreds of articles and essays. But what he really wanted to do was, what was in his heart, was he wanted to be a novelist. So he wrote a few. He did usually publish his novels under a pen name, but none of them were really successful. The reviews were lukewarm, sales were only moderate. Seemed like every novel he wrote lacked that something indefinable, something that just wasn't there. Because his inborn creative aptitude, his creative powers, if you will, were at their best when he wrote in the rhythms and conventions of nonfiction. He finally recognized this. He said it really broke his heart, but he gave up trying to write novels. One of his interests happened to be history, so he turned his attention to writing that and won the Pulitzer Prize for a nonfiction work on the history of the American West. So the success. The three long-established authors I briefly mentioned throughout, Ann Tyler, Lee Child, and Stephen King, each of these people has a specialty aimed at a particular segment of the book buying public. Not to say they don't write, they do. All three of them have written other things, but they're mainly known for one specialty. This is a specialty that makes the best use of their individually developed talents as a writer. And Tyler writes mainstream fiction about families, novels about families, people with quirky characters who usually have odd jobs and peculiar situations. This is what she's known for. Lee Child has made millions, 50 million to be exact, with his thriller suspense novels featuring a former Army cop named Jack Reacher as the main character. And Stephen King, who is, of course, a legend in his own time, is famous worldwide for horror and sci-fi and fantasy, although, of course, he didn't invent these genres. In other words, each of them has a writing niche. A niche is defined as the ideal job, position, or situation for someone, especially one that they like, right, and feel is the most suitable for their particular experience and talents. So each of the above three authors has developed a large, loyal readership fan base in their particular niche. We all aspire to develop a large, loyal readership, right? So what about finding and settling into your own niche? Here's some of the benefits of a niche. Having a niche, one, focuses your creativity. Two, makes the best use of your time. I mean, after all, all of us have other lives besides writing, right? We have family, we might have a day job, we have other obligations that take our time, hobbies, and so on. And three, having a niche streamlines your marketing efforts. In short, it's just easier, especially for new writers. Taking a look at these benefits one at a time. Niche writers have the time and creative energy to delve a little deeper, to master the conventions and rhythms of their chosen genre. Having a writing niche focuses your creative thinking in the same direction, okay, instead of splintering it among diverse projects that require a different mindset. And having a niche makes marketing easier because the niche subject, whatever it is, attracts a specific audience. I think we all know, right, that finding book publishers and markets for short stories not to mention studying all the many requirements for what they will accept, when and how, what format, etc. It's very time consuming. And moreover, these days, traditional book publishers who have merged now, and certainly magazines tend to specialize. Niche writers don't have to spend extra time studying a publisher's requirements or cultivating marketing contacts in a profusion of different fields, which means your time is maximized in terms of finding and contacting and tracking outlets that specialize in your subject or genre. So if today's agents and publishers say that the wise course of action is to specialize in one area before you spread your wings over new skies, then how do you find it? The niche that's right for you. Start with your own interests and experiences. Ask yourself, what kind of books do you like reading the most? And what do you think about the most? How do you feel about it? What you think about the most? Often the genre we chooses us. It's what we're drawn to. It's what we think about the most. Or reading a different genre fascinates us. It produces a sense of recognition. And, oh, I could write that feeling. And so we do. What do you know best? Write what you know, tried and true advice, right down in the craft of writing means what you know from experience combined with what you can find out with a little research. Over a lifetime, you've participated in or observed jillions of human interactions. You know your own life experiences, your own values, your beliefs in human nature, and your own worldview. You know what physical and mental abilities you have, and you're at least subliminally aware of how those natural abilities influence or dictate your distinctive personality traits. For example, right, going back to the child, his hero, Jack Reacher, is a very tall man with a very plain face. The child himself is a very tall man with a very plain face. So he knows firsthand how a man with those physical characteristics sees himself and how he is perceived by others. In fact, the author frequently uses these traits, these tall man, plain guy traits as a plot hinge or to start a scene or as part of a scene. And perhaps Lee himself never faced the situations he puts his main character in, but he knows or imagines he knows how he would react in that given situation. So he can write his character with authority and does. Yeah? As for his hero's fantastic adventures, he gets to make those up. And because his hero roams all over the United States, he specifically chose to set his novels in the United States because there's more area here, more places to go than in his native England. Okay? So he has to research those, of course. Okay? Other questions to ask yourself. What are the suggestions you hear over and over from your critique group or your beta readers? Think about that. If you've already published in more than one genre, what do the reviewers say? 5 stars for the Western, but just 3 for the sci-fi novel and only 2 for the romance? Well, that's a clue. Maybe the efforts that only garnered 2 and 3 stars on a review lack the right flow, the right conventions, and the right rhythms for those particular genres. It's up to you to analyze all this and then find the right bailiwick for you. All that said, though, a niche doesn't need to be the end-all be-all. Once you've conquered a certain area, you can go on, you can change genres later, you can always cross over later. But it is a wise choice when you're mastering the skills and and the creative energy and the balancing acts, frankly, it takes to write anything at all. So, thanks for listening. Do I have any questions? Yes, Elaine.
Yeah, where to start? I guess one of my questions is being I'm writing something about elder abuse and the person who did it was my sister. One, do you do it under a pseudonym and therefore be safe from liability? Or do you do it under a real name knowing I can also say from a point of view as a psychotherapist?
Using a pseudonym is not going to save you from liability.
So
It's going to make you harder to find, maybe, but it won't protect you from a lawsuit.
Can you change the name, sister?
Can you change, that's what I
Sure.
mean, how much things?
Sure.
Yeah, that's one of my things, how much do you change the name even of, instead of Seattle, of all the location? So that's what I'm not clear on, how to pull this off.
What do you develop a feel for it?
Yeah. She's talking to people on Zoom. She's asking about how to kind of disguise the fact that she's writing a real life elder abuse situation, right? And she doesn't necessarily want to name the people for fear of, being sued for what? Slander, libel.
Yeah, so how much of the things do you change, the locations, the place, does everything completely have to change?
Well, I think that would be.
Like this took place in Seattle, Washington. Do I have it like California?
You can. I think that you need the services of a editor for that, a developmental editor for that. If you fictionalize it, okay, that is change the names, then I think you should say in the front that names have been changed to protect, the usual disclaimer in the front, and then do so. And that way she can't say that you're talking about
Do you think
her.
as long, if I change the names of every?
Well, on the other hand, we aren't lawyers here.
But again,
Right.
they would know if this is my name, they'll know who my relatives are.
That's true.
Do you have to mention that you're wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, basically, this is a story of a lot of people where the person who has the power of attorney is usually a relative of another person who can pull off abuse based, given that role.
Yeah, because as Cheryl says, there's a disclaimer. I think the words are something based on a true story, but the names are changed to protect the innocent.
And keep in mind that none of us here are lawyers,
Yeah.
okay?
Tim's a lawyer?
Yeah, but
Hey!
I'm not, I just play one on TV these days.
Yes,
I have a different kind of question, or did that answer your question enough?
But hold on,
You wanna-
I'm gonna say something. I was just gonna add, you need to change it enough so people can't say it's Mary.
See, that's what's so tricky.
Well,
Well-
it is tricky, but once you identify and everything sounds like Mary, then you haven't done enough. You need to change it, and it'll be in a different setting, maybe a different city, who knows? But you can't use people's names.
Can you all
and not
hear?
expect somebody to
People on
start
Zoom, can you hear what he's
on
saying?
a lawsuit.
That's what's funny, because they know, because it makes reference, obviously, this is a sister.
You can talk about what the problems are that occurred to this person, all the abuses that took place, but you have to make it far enough away from the actual person that people cannot say, oh, this is Mary.
See, that's why I'm not sure how to do it. 'Cause
Well,
usually-
you gotta think about it.
It doesn't mean
When he
people
said,
who we know
when he said it
plus-
was pure and clear, you basically.
It's fiction. You can set it anywhere in the world. You can
Right.
change the characters. It doesn't have to be a sister, it can be a cousin or a niece.
Well, hers isn't fiction.
Yeah.
No, but you're gonna turn it into it because you need to get away
Or
from
talk to
who it is and where it is and the people that are implicated in it. Because you're trying to put a story out there, but if you start naming all these different people, the rest of your life is gonna be in court.
See, that's what I'm wondering.
If it's a memoir or an article, I don't know what you're writing, but whatever you write, you can generalize it enough. So if she picks up the book, I pick up the book, Mike picks up the book, we can all gain something from it. So you need to generalize it
It
enough.
sounds like the important thing is what happened. People don't necessarily have to know that that you were directly involved with it.
Correct.
Well, that's the way the story goes, because she had the power of attorney, and I'm the one trying to bring to mind.
But do they have to know you're the one?
Yeah,
That's the question.
it's the same facts, but different names, different place. The relationships are the same, but it's different characters in a different story.
Another way to do it is simply to don't consider it a memoir, consider it a novel.
Yeah, a fictional
And you've
novel.
got your plot and you've got your theme, you've got your story. But if you say, if this is a work of fiction, you say that right up front. And then you give the characters names and you give the whole thing a setting. You've still got your story, and if it's a good story, why does it have to be true?
Well, that makes sense, so, but I need to somehow, but it somehow has to be a family relative, because usually that's who would have the power of attorney.
Well, that's fine, but fictionalize the whole family. Just turn it into a novel, but with the real facts that occurred, framing your mystery, your adventure, your thriller, your suspense.
I think that was very well said.
I was gonna say, a narrator can also be a brother. You know, I don't know what your ultimate goal is.
Well, it's to educate, because how many people have had this kind of story where the power of attorney has the legal right to make any decision.
That's why you wanna generalize it.
Yeah, these several had. I mean, my dental hygienist had that problem. Her sisters had the power of attorney, okay? And she and the other sister thought that the sister with the power of attorney was, abusing their mother.
But you don't have to present it as a case history,
Yeah.
factual case history. I learned probably more from the at least as much from the novels I read. For example, I learned all about Korea and how they preserved food and how they got through the war from a novel rather than from a dry history. People will still learn the lesson they're trying to impart.
And so switch the names, the location, and the dating.
Just fictionalize the whole thing.
And you can go ahead and use a pen name if you wish. It's just not gonna save you from legal action, that's all. I mean, don't do it for that purpose. Don't use a pen name for that purpose. You might do it because your friends, your relatives, okay, know what's going on in a family and you don't want them to be, embarrassed, let's say, that you've got your own name on this. You can use a pen name, but it's not gonna save you from,
You can what?
the pen name is not going to save you from litigation if someone, but it does disguise you for a while.
Makes them dig deeper.
Yeah. Right, yes.
Say that again? Makes them dig deeper to find you.
So there is an advantage in the fictional to do it, so it's not versus saying I'm a psychotherapist, which to give credit, but I can still say I'm a psychotherapist.
No, it's just pure fiction.
Just, yeah,
And minimize the characters so you don't have all your uncles and aunts. And
yeah,
brothers.
right.
And it keeps the story simple, keeps people focused on the story and not all these different names and stuff.
Not on what the hell's happening with
And
all
also
these
the
organizations.
most important events, so it's not all the little things that are going wrong. Just something that defines the story clearly, that happens with this power of internship, so.
Tim, yeah.
What did you want?
I had a sort of a very specific kind of question.
Can you people hear Tim? Can you hear Tim? Yes?
If you're self-published through Amazon
Mm-hmm.
and you want to have a pen name, can you set it up with Amazon so that your royalty payments go to your name and the
Yes, because they ask you when you set it up. So when you set up that book to,
so that makes it pretty easy.
yeah, right. And I imagine all the other publishing agencies do, yeah, I imagine they do.
She had a question.
All right,
This is more of a comment that I'd like comments on. I did sing under a pseudonym, and after I created my pseudonym, I put a lot of feeling into. I found on YouTube that there were child pageant stars that were famous on YouTube that had very similar names to mine. So I didn't hear any discussion about that. When you choose your pseudonym, make sure nobody else is using a similar name.
well, I mean, yes, you have to put some thought into choosing, a pseudonym, and you need to go online. I mean, these days is the easiest thing, and figure out, does somebody else already have, right? Does somebody else, or have something similar? How many people are in the world? 3-4 billion or something like that, and you're not gonna be able to escape it entirely. Yeah. Just do your best.
I just wanted to add, even though you take a pen name, that doesn't mean you have to totally write under that pen name.
That's true.
There are other writers who write genre in one genre with their true name, like J.K. Rowling, but she uses Robert Galbraith to do her mystery crime novels.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
If you're
okay.
crossing
I may have
genres,
missed it 'cause the
oh, you couldn't hear?
laptop is between us.
Oh, okay. No, it is recommended that if you write in a different genre, okay, you use a different name. Because J.K. Rowling is attached to what? Harry Potter, right? And so if she writes something else, then people don't want, they don't want to guess, right? If you don't want to read Harry Potter, you know, or if you do, you see that name, you think, oh, this is another, novel. Same applies to all, every writer,
There's
really.
an interesting example of this. There's a Scottish author called Ian Banks, and he writes fiction, but he also writes science fiction, and he goes under the name Ian M. Banks.
Okay, that's not a big change. That's not a big change. Not a huge change. And it used to be conventional wisdom that if you were a woman writing a thriller, you used a man's name, as your author name, as a marketing tool. And for men writing romance stories, used a woman's name. That's a tricky thing these days, though, because more and more writers are appearing. I mean, how often did Agatha Christie appear in public for a book signing? Probably not a lot, right? Of course, she wasn't trying to hide her gender, but that's something to think about too. I mean, if you're a man writing a romance, and I don't know how many there are out there, when you show up for a book signing, how do you disguise the fact that you're a guy,
Wear a
right?
wig.
Yeah, well,
You use neutral general names like Wiley.
you can, or use your initials.
There's a lot of names out
I mean,
there.
Michelle-
Jordan is another one.
Michelle Hamilton, yes, that's true. Michelle Hamilton just uses ML, Hamilton. So people who don't
Right.
know her, because she writes mysteries,
P.D. James.
and P.D. James, same,
We have 2 questions from people on Zoom.
Oh,
Can I
okay.
read them? This is from Kathy Kanika Marshall. Can you hear me, Kathy? Okay. I write historical nonfiction writing about my formerly enslaved ancestors. I do mention the names of the slaveholders, places where the plantations were, plus lots of factual documents. I'm wondering what type of disclaimer I should be including to protect myself from legal problems with descendants of those slaveholding families. I circulate the manuscript to my known living family members before publishing the book.
Kathy, I don't know. Offhand, those people you're writing about, first of all, they're dead, right?
Right.
But they do have descendants, that might take offense. I can't give you a legal answer to that. However, it is a fact, right?
Yep.
And you've documented the fact. So if you are sued for libel, then your defense is they are facts.
Truth is a defense.
Truth is a defense. How you stop, she's writing nonfiction. She's writing nonfiction. That's not going to stop them from filing suit. It will probably prevent them from winning because truth is a defense.
So Adele Tarantino, whose last name you might recognize, has a very specific question.
Okay.
What if you have a name like mine? It's my legal name, but I'm not related to Quentin Tarantino, nor do I write. And I think it got cut off. Hang on. Hang on one second. Nor do I write in his genre. Good question.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I don't know what I would tell. I'm sure there's more Tarantino's writing than just him, right? Is that true? Google it and see. How many? Yeah, you have a different first name. And
Billy
yes,
herself is Quentin's cousin.
right.
Long distance cousin.
That's gonna bring him out of the woodwork. But you are writing something totally different. He's a script writer, right? And he's famous. I don't know what to tell you. If you want to use your own name, by all means, or you can use a pen name. Because it is a famous name, and he's alive, right? Still alive. Yes?
So Jennifer Rowe is the most famous, she's called the Agatha Christie of Australia. She's the most famous mystery writer in Australia.
Did you hear that?
And that she's got two ends on her name. So it sounds like I should have used a pseudonym.
But she's in Australia. Do people here know her?
Yeah, probably.
Probably. She's not.
Mystery fans probably do.
Oh, okay. Are you writing a mystery?
I do, yeah.
Hmm.
Now, I've already got one book published under my name.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about maybe re-releasing it with a different name and actually a different title. Changing a few things. So maybe I should choose a pen name for both that and the one I'm currently working on.
Yeah, think about it. I mean, think about that, because there are consequences of using a pen. There are consequences of using a pen name, okay? And again, how many names are there out there in the world, right? There's jillions of duplications of names. You can't escape them all. What do you write, Adele?
Short story.
I can't hear.
Sorry. Short stories.
She's not muted, but.
That's
Just
type
have
it
it
in
in
chat.
Put it in chat. She's typing. We're getting close to the end. Michael had a question.
Yes,
So I understand you used a pen name at one point?
I did.
So I'm wondering what motivated you to do that and how do you feel it worked out?
Okay, that's a good question. Okay. I told you some of these reasons overlap, okay? So I used a pen name for two reasons. One is I didn't like the name I had, okay? I was divorced from an ex-husband, but I still had his name as a name I didn't relate to, right? You have to have a name for identification purposes. That's just followed me around. So I didn't especially care for that name. And also, I was single and living alone. And so I wanted people, and this is Los Angeles, many years ago. And I didn't want people to try and find out where I lived. Okay. So I used a pen name for those purposes, and it worked out very well. Because I was writing specifically for a regional magazine. Okay. I think I wrote 52, something like 50 articles for them. But then they started publishing, because they thought they were doing us a favor, right? They had regular contributors. At the end of the article, they started publishing our phone numbers. Okay, so that, yes, our personal phone numbers, so that other publishers might find us, because the publisher of that magazine, which was Working World, found that she was getting requests from other publishers in the same genre saying, can you connect me with your contributor so-and-so, right? So they started doing that. So thank God I had, a different name on my articles, because I got a really crank call from a woman who insisted I had written about her husband, and how dare I? I never met the man in my life. I said, I don't know who he is. I'm, basing this on someone else entirely. Yes?
You might still be too angry from being close.
Oh, Adele, didn't we have?
Writers learn how to back away for a while. What you're collecting is all good background research, but I've written things before and I've been told you're still too angry. So you may need to back away for a while, continue documenting
Did
your
Adele
research,
have a question?
but you're going to eventually learn. Depending on what you're writing, what is appropriate.
I've mellowed in the last 8 years.
Okay.
So maybe it's a more mellowed.
Well, I just want to take this opportunity to thank Cheryl. That was really an excellent presentation.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
We're really lucky to have you come back and speak to us. Please stick around and talk to each other. I'm sure Elaine, there are other people who have some answers for you. And I hope we see everybody next month, or actually in 2 weeks for our next in-person meeting.
Yes, Arden Arcade Library.
Arden
That's Bernard's
Arcade,
library.
yes.
It's
Thank
out
you.
on
Okay,
Mark
thank you,
Road.
Tim. Thank you for listening. Adele, I don't, can you hear me? You can
Yes.
type your question, I don't think.
That's
Tim,
okay.
does Tim have it?
Can you hear me?
Okay, all right.